Well, hey, y'all, it's Christmas season. You know what that means? It's crazy town. You've got so much flying at you during this time. Stop just for a moment. Think about back what it was like for you when you were in middle school or maybe even younger, and it was summer vacay. And you were sitting around the house, maybe slouching down the couch, and you go, Mom, I'm so bored. And you think, dude, what would I give to have one of those days back, just even right now, right? Well, listen to this week's question brought to us from Derek. He's the high school minister at Cool Spring Baptist in Mechanicsville, Virginia. I think you'll identify with Derek's question. Derek, what do you got for us?
Hey Doc, Derek here. It is 5 a.m. and I am trying to get a jump on some seminary. So that's related to my question. How do you balance seminary? How do you balance school, marriage, kids, and ministry? What are your tips, tricks, advice on keeping your head straight and your heart, your mind, and your soul healthy in all of those various stages of life intersecting together? So that's my question, and I'm looking forward to hearing your answer. Thanks.
So, Derek, you bring a great realistic need that's going on in just not your life, but in so many who watch these videos. So for everyone to know, when Derek and I were on the phone during this week of this conversation, he was explaining to me how that, he had his seminary classes all due that coming Monday. Oh, and by the way, they're going from their apartment to their new home very, very soon, like that next week. We all know it's Christmas season. It's COVID season. He has 3 children under the age of 3. Congratulations to you and Hannah on your 3rd born child, among your high school ministry responsibilities and a lot of other things. So I want to have Janet come in and step in and take a lot of this conversation, because my wife is not just my wife. She is on her own an excellent ministry leader. She's been involved in lay Christian counseling, Christian ministries, counseling ministries for years, as well as also teaching in the classroom, family and child development. And in her course, in many of her courses, she actually talks about things like time management. And I thought, man, I'm going to take a step back on this one and let the rock star take this one. So Jan, here we go.
Well, you put me up way too high, but thank you so much for that intro. But also thank you for the question, Derek. Derek is coming from Richmond area. He's a high school pastor. And of course, Rich just mentioned as far as different elements of Derek's life and then also his question. And we heard about how do you intersect these lanes? This is what Derek was talking about. And a lot of you have the same lanes. In fact, we're sitting right in front of a lot of our Christmas stockings, things like that. Rich and I were talking about earlier that, there's all sorts of stress factors. And I think that's one of the first things to look at is that stress can be good and bad, right? Many of you will be stressed out at this time of the year for many reasons, and you just listed several of them that Derek has, but also that we have. One of the things that we look at is eustress, which is something that is a good, positive stress.
Can you spell that for me?
Yes, eustress, eustress, which is a good and
I can
positive.
spell stress. It was the U thing.
Right,
so
it's
EU.
that EU, and
Okay.
it's just that it's that good stress. And so, Derek mentioned as far as seminary, trying to finish that last, paper
Right.
or that last class before
Right.
Christmas. You have this motivation to finish, and so that stress that we feel like we have an hour before we have to do something, and it's like, oh, time is ticking, and we get this surge to do it, right? And so
Adrenaline?
Adrenaline, yes.
Yeah.
And so it kind of really pushes you forward to do that. And so that's a stress, though. And then you add on top of that, you just mentioned moving. Wow, that is a huge stress, too. And part of that is, a loss of maybe where you lived and all those fun memories that you had and that you built there, but then also the excitement of moving into a new location. And so you have the loss of that stress, and then you have the gain of what you look forward to. And so there's that eustress, right? Then stress as far as family at Christmas time. Hopefully it's a good Christmas,
stress, yeah.
right? And not bad. And so all those things, though, we have to see that they have numbers. They have different levels of stress for each one of those. And that's not even looking at COVID. That's its own
stress
category. Yeah. And that could be good and bad too, right? For an introvert, COVID is probably a good thing, right?
We think about ministry. I mean, your church, all of our ministries have had to do, the new big word is pivot. So you're still trying to figure a lot of that out. And then we start to get a little more air, and where we live in Virginia, all of a sudden, a little more latitude to ministries, and all of a sudden maybe now more restrictions again. So we get it. We absolutely get it.
Oh, we get it. Yeah. And so even for me, because I have that knowledge, but yet the experience of looking at stresses and saying, first of all, recognizing, and that's like point one, recognize that you do have these stresses. And some of them are going to be good. Some of them are not going to be so good, or they're going to be horrible stress. And the other thing I think you mentioned to Derek sometime in your conversation is that this season of life is not always going to be like this exactly.
This too shall pass.
Yes. And so, having 3 kids under the age of 3, they're not always going to be under the age of 3, although they will be all teenagers probably at the same time eventually, but I don't want to create more stress for you. But that'll be a fun time. But this is a season that that this is not going to stay like this.
Right.
Picture.
It's a very unique situation that he's in right now.
It is. And I think many of us have been in these types of seasons, maybe not exactly, but very similar in some regards. And so we know that right now is not all that it's always going to be. And so this type of stress, is going to change. But just, first of all, recognize that it is
so
stress.
It's real. We want to identify that what you're going through, any of you watching this, what you're going through is real.
It is real. Recognize the stress factors, and even that some are going to be a little bit more stressful than others. And the next thing then is to balance. And I think that's the number one question that we always get as far as how to balance ministry and family and all the things like Derek was saying. Well, a lot of times in my classes, what I always tell them at the beginning of the semesters, I always say, pace yourself. And I want them to get a rhythm of what life looks like. But we all know that life isn't always about, that ebb and flow and everything's very natural. We're going to have hiccups along the way and struggles and challenges and things like that. Those good stresses.
And we all know, especially in student ministry, summer, every other ministry in the world takes off but us. It gets cranked up. So we know that there's a rhythm in ministry. And just, I think for all of us realizing that that's just real.
It is
There's
real.
going to be ebb and flow. There's going to be natural rhythms.
Right. So pace yourself, knowing the structure and the routine and the rhythm. And then second of all, I tell them to press on. And that's where it's like, okay, I'm going to get that steam a little bit more. Like I'm in the midst of it, and I'm going to keep going and keep going and keep that motivation to keep going. And then I usually tell my students at the end of the semester, now I'm going to tell you to push, because there's going to be those times that you're just going to have to push forward to get something complete, and you start seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, and you have to just push yourself to do that. But we can't stay in that push mode all the time, right?
Why?
Because we will get burned out. And that's what happens to a lot of people in ministry, is that they're trying to always have this push method all the time, where they're push, and try to keep things always balancing and spinning so they don't let anything fall and they don't take any rest time. So then they get burned out. So, there's that time to ebb and flow. So pacing yourself, pressing forward, pushing, and then that pause.
Yeah.
Pause is the last one.
And that's something I know I mentioned to Derek. I said, well, do you have to take classes this next semester? And I think he's already thinking through, maybe not. Right. So I know for you, you had to put a couple of your doctoral classes on pause because of some different stressors in our own, not our marriage, that's been good, but in our own life, we had some other things going on. It's like, okay, for you, let's take a step back. Right. So yeah, it's okay to pause. It's okay to pause. And like I said, I have the knowledge about these things. I can talk about this all day. But yet, for me, I know when I get stressed out, usually I'll get a tension headache or something else happens. Usually something physical that happens to me. And I'm like, oh, that's my indicator that's saying I need to take some margin time. I need to take a pause. Okay, I need to take a break. And so that's our last one is, first of all, recognize stress factors, to balance. And there's that pace, press, and push. And then margin time is really that pause where you're still doing life, but you have to build in some extra buffer. Okay. Right. That margin time is really taking time. And there's going to be seasons of life where it's like, right now, like you mentioned, I'm not going to take a class, or right now I'm going to say no to this. And I love doing a certain thing, fill in the blank, what works for you, right? Something that maybe you've done for 5 years and you're like, I can't because I just took on 2 other things. And it's like, okay, well, what are you going to take off of your plate? Yeah. You can't, God did not make us to be robots.
He created that Sabbath. He created us to have that margin time. He created us to have that pause break to refresh, to go the long haul. And so that's where, these are really, really important. And what that looks like for me or what that looks like for you are two different things sometimes. And what it looks like for Derek or the rest of you, this is where it looks different. And so I can't tell Derek how exactly and what exactly to do, but he gets to take a look at that,
I think the first thing is, I know for me, is I have to sit down at a table, and whether it's my marker board on the wall or your style and system is different than my style and my system.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I'm very visual. I know you are too, babe, but I want to write things down. Like, what are the essentials? So what do I absolutely need to accomplish? Now, here's where we up in our minds know it, but then how it really plays out could be different. In our mind, the first priority has got to be our walk with the Lord. Now, we all in ministry know that. Unfortunately, our time in the morning with the Lord is usually what goes out the window first because we're too busy because God will understand, or I want to be legalistic, so I don't have to read every day the Word of God. And actually give us this day our daily bread, and the Word is our daily bread. And so that's the first encouragement I give to everybody. Do not sacrifice your time with the Lord, because when you sacrifice that, you're no longer connected to the vine, and everything begins to unravel. So I'd say really, no matter what, y'all, you've got to spend time connected to the vine in the Word every day.
Yes.
And that's going to look different for many of you. I love to read the Bible through every year chronologically. That's just my style. But whatever you have as far as your time with the Lord, guard it. I know you do. I do.
Right.
And that's the first thing. So then think, okay, what are the next essentials?
Right.
I think that's the first place to start.
Right.
And I know for me, Mr. OCD, I want to do it all so well that sometimes is to a negative in my life, because I can spend so much time working on so many details on a certain thing that the other essentials may not get done. So sometimes I got to step back. Now I'm going to talk grading papers for a moment. And you think, what does that have to do with this? Well, it's part of my rhythm. I'll say for me, if I have 20 some papers to grade, I did not do well grading them all 1 through 20 in one setting. I'll set small goals. I'll grade 5 papers, take a break, go do something else, then come back and grade papers 6 through 10. I need to take a mental break. What about you?
Yeah, and I'm a planner, and so I like to do small tasks first. It's kind of like that Dave Ramsey thing as far as the snowball effect.
Right.
So I'd rather tackle a small task first and then build momentum to finish the large task. So I look at those things.
Because you want to get going.
Because I want to get going and I get motivated. So if I can check something off my mental list, it's always good.
Bringing this to a close, I mean, there's so many different ways that we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
So many different ways you could take this, like on time management, or there's different lanes we could go down through. But I think the big thing to kind of the wrap up is this too shall pass. These heavy seasons are what they are, and just how to endure through them. Is I really go back right back to making sure you're really spending time with the Lord and as a couple with each other. Don't let the children grow up before your eyes and poof, it's gone. So, tackle your kiddos. If you guys got little ones at home, tackle them. You bring them in, and when you see them, just love on them. And boy, that even brings me back joy. And of course, they're gone now. We still have the stockings hung by the chimney with care. And we got Joshy's little one here. It says that this is the grandson, right? So it's like, gosh, I was looking at his pictures today thinking, I miss that little boy. I can't wait to see him again. Corny, I know. But it's like, let's not let go of that. Anything else you want to say on the way home?
On the way home?
Well, take us home.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Take us home.
The biggest thing is recognize the stresses, make sure that you balance the things that are entrusted to you, and then also have that margin time. You mentioned as far as taking time in your relationship with the Lord. That is first and foremost. And we know that. And the second one that we didn't really mention is take care of yourself. And that's not to be selfish. I think as Christians, we think, I can't be selfish. I've got to serve everyone. And we can't serve well if we're not taking care of our own self. And so that's that balance piece, right? And so don't neglect those things that are on there. And I think the other thing is if Satan's going to get to us in any way, especially as ministers, and I mean like those those that are servants of his, of the Lord, he's going to really try to make us feel guilty for saying no to something. For me, as a people pleaser, I'm going to feel guilty. And you know what? That's not, I have to check my motives. I kind of feel like we need to have another discussion in this as far as priorities, time management, and all that.
It's you can be spiritual and say no.
Yes, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just the question is, what do you say no to?
Yeah. And we could probably talk about that.
That may make a great
might be good.
2021 conversation.
Yes.
Derek and all of us watching this, I hope there was a little bit of encouragement with that.
Yes.
Again, what you're going through is normal. It's
Yeah.
real. Say the 3 again, Jan.
As far as the 3,
Yeah,
recognize
yeah.
the stress factors, making sure that you're balanced, and then also 3, taking that margin and figuring out what that looks like for you.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You guys,
Thank you.
have a great holiday.
Yes.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
From
Enjoy
our
it.
home to yours.
Yes.